Hello everyone. In this video, I'm going to give you an example on the absolute and comparative advantage using an example on two countries, USA and Mexico, and two goods, hamburgers and tacos. So as you can see in this table, we have the two countries and we have the two goods produced per each country, and we have the amount of production per each good for each country. And of course, we can use this information to draw the production possibility curve. So usually this type of questions or these types of questions would ask you about the absolute advantage and the comparative advantage. So in terms of absolute advantage, we know that it's related to the ability of a certain country, or it could be an individual or a firm, to produce more of a certain good than the competitors. So, and of course using the same amount of resources. So if we can see here, if the USA devoted all the resources to tacos, it's gonna produce 54, and Mexico is going to produce 45. So we can say that United States has an absolute advantage in the production of tacos. What if the USA shifts all the production techniques to the production of hamburgers? It's going to produce 90 units. However, Mexico is going to produce 18. So of course, again, USA has an absolute advantage in hamburger and absolute advantage in tacos. So in other words, it has an absolute advantage in the production of the two goods. The second question usually is about the comparative advantage. So we want to create a table that would tell us what about the absolute advantage. So I'm sorry, the comparative advantage. So we can do something like this. We can compare the first two lines. So here an additional 30 units of hamburger implies a reduction by 18 units in tacos. So we can write it this way: in order to produce 1 unit, so plus 1, or let me write it in more detail. So if the USA produces additional 30 units, which is the difference between the 0 and the 30, this implies a reduction by 18 units. And if you divide this by 30, both sides, so you can make it easier by saying, okay, so the 1 unit implies 18 over 30 is equal to 0.6. So in order to produce an additional unit of hamburger, USA has to reduce the production of tacos by 0.6. So the 0.6 here is, it's not actually negative, but just it implies a reduction, okay? And in order to think about it the other way, so what about the 1 unit in production of tacos? So if I divide now both sides here by 0.6, I will get the following line, which means that the 1 unit in tacos is equal to, so 1 over 0.6 is going to be equal to 1.67 tons of hamburger. Okay, so you can like put this into like a table here, and this is related to the amount of production for each good, right, and how much you will lose from the other good. This is for USA. If you repeat the same thing for Mexico, as you can see here, from 0 to 6, so in other words, additional 6 tons of hamburger implies a loss of 15 tons of tacos. If I divide both sides by now you divide both sides by 6, so 6 over 6, so in other words, we're going to say a 1 unit of hamburger is equal to 15 over 6, 2.5 tons of tacos. Now divide by 2.5, so we can say a 1 unit production or an additional production of tacos implies 1 over 2.5, 0.4 cost for hamburger. So you can again have it this way, and this is about Mexico. And now we want to compare the production in both countries. So let me make it in a different line and a different color, and we can say that, okay, producing 1 unit implies 0.6 loss of tacos. However, this one unit of hamburger implies more cost, right? 2.5. So that means the cost of production hamburgers in the USA is cheaper because it will only cost 0.6, but it will cost here 2.5. So we can say that USA is better at producing, right, hamburgers, right? Because the 1 unit of hamburger implies a less loss of the other product. What about the 1 unit tacos? So as I can see here, a 1 unit tacos implies a loss of 1.67 hamburger or tons in hamburgers. However, here it's only 0.4. So we can say that Mexico has a comparative advantage in the production of tacos. So we can write it here. So USA has a comparative advantage in producing hamburgers, and Mexico has a comparative advantage in producing tacos. Okay, why? Because here we can see that 0.6 is less than 2.5, or the cost of USA would be less than the cost in Mexico. And here we can say that in USA the cost was 167, however it's much greater than the cost in Mexico of 0.4. So it's much cheaper in Mexico as compared to the USA, and that's why Mexico has a comparative advantage. Okay? All right, so let me keep this here. So the next thing is we want to see like usually in the information given in a question will let you know what is the current production. So suppose that so like they will give you some information, and we will need to use this information in order to continue the question. So USA, so this is like an assumption. Assume that USA is currently producing 60 tons of hamburger and 18 tons of tacos. Okay, and this is USA. And suppose that Mexico is currently producing 12 tons of hamburger and 15 tons of tacos. So we actually want to know if each of these countries specialize in the production that it has, or in the production of the good in which it has a comparative advantage. So that means USA will specialize in the production of hamburger and forget about tacos, and Mexico will specialize in the production of tacos and forget about hamburgers. Okay, so we want to know if each country specializes in producing just one good. Okay, so just one good. How much would be the total additional tons of hamburger that can be produced for the two countries. So the question would be, if each country specializes in production or in the production of just one good. Okay, so what is the total additional ton or tons of hamburgers? So we're gonna like repeat it one time for hamburger and one time for tacos. So of hamburgers that can be produced for the two countries. For the two countries. Okay, so we are going to use this information, which is basically based on an assumption that currently USA is producing two goods, 60 and 18. Okay, which is actually one of the rows here in the table. So this one, 60 and 18. And now suppose that the USA decided to specialize in the production of the good that it has a comparative advantage. So it's going to specialize in the production of hamburger. And it's just one good. So the question is asking you that each country is going to specialize in the production of one good. So we can actually use this very last row and say, okay, I'm going to be producing 0 of tacos, and this implies 90 of hamburgers. So the total production would be like 90 hamburgers, okay? And this is the production of hamburgers at 0 tacos minus how much the USA is currently producing, which is this number, minus 60, right? Which is the production with no specialization. This is the production if the country specializes in one good. This is no specialization. So USA was producing 60. And what about the case for Mexico? So Mexico, it's going to be equal to 12. So it's minus 12. Okay, so it is equal, actually 12 is right here. Okay, so 90 is if the country specializes minus the production 60 of hamburgers, which is right here, and 12 of hamburgers, then the total is going to be 18 tons additional production of hamburgers. So the hamburgers now is equal to 18 tons additional. This number was after specialization, so that's why we got the number from here. 0 implies 90 minus how much the country now is producing minus the other country is now producing, and that implies 18 additional production for the two countries. Okay, now let's repeat this for tacos. So tacos is going to be the production for Mexico under comparative advantage. So it has a comparative advantage in the production of tacos. So it will shift all the resources to the production of tacos, 0 to hamburger, because the question is assuming just one good. So that means 0 and 45. So after specialization, so this number is going to be 45. Okay, minus how much now the USA is producing and how much now Mexico is producing. So minus 18 and minus 15. So the additional tons is going to be 12 tons of additional production for the two countries. So remember, each question is going to ask about main points, so the absolute advantage and the comparative advantage and number 3, the gains from trade, right? And additional, or you can actually think about the last point implies the gains from trade, which is basically implies additional production for the two countries, because now we after specialization, each country is going to specialize in the good that it has a comparative advantage, so this would benefit both countries. So usually, let me write it so that advantage, and usually all the questions would be around those main 4 points. Okay, so if you have any questions, please post on the discussion forum.